Hey everybody. Uh, Welcome to UnConference. I'll be your host today. My name is Rob Haar. One of the founders and the president of Sparkbox, and we're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. Uh, Today's UnConference, we are going to be discussing the intersection of AI and human expertise. And this is something we've been spending a lot of time on at Sparkbox, and it's become something that, we have a lot of thoughts on, and I can't wait for you to hear what the team has to share. So let's get started this way. Uh, AI. Over the last several months and last year, really, the requests have started coming in from clients and prospects. Universities, manufacturing companies, aviation companies, technology companies, healthcare, and that list just keeps growing. Um, and they all want to know what to do with it. And it feels like on every single call, our clients and prospective clients bring up AI. They know that they should be using it, but they don't know how or where to get started. And that's a question we've started helping them answer. We're at the point, I believe, that AI can start to add real value to our clients today to help create a better web. There's a lot of conversations going on about where the technology is going in the future, but we think there are places and have found places where it can already improve our work and what we're doing today. Yes, we know that everyone seems to be talking about AI right now. I think what makes Sparkbox's perspective unique is we are looking for places where AI can augment and empower our current systems and teams. We don't believe that AI will replace humans. We believe, as we always have, that the future of the web is human. This is a nuanced conversation, and there are no simple answers. But let me back up a little bit and talk about what we've done the last year. So, one of our core values at Sparkbox is and has been for a number of years that we're curious. And with all the conversation taking place around AI, one of the things we did last year was establish an AI expedition team, specifically focused on discovering and understanding what is possible today and in the future. Over the last year, this group has met weekly. When we identify something that has potential to be integrated into our process and client work, it can then graduate and from exploration to something a little more structured, so it can be integrated into our workflows. We need to continue to learn and stay curious. Several of the people who have participated in those discussions over the last year are here sharing today. I mentioned that we're curious. We have a ton of people who have strong beliefs on our team, and we encourage that. But those strong beliefs have to be loosely held. We are constantly learning because things change. Some of the assumptions that we've made and some of the things that we think we know are fundamentally shifting and we've been wrong about. And I think that is a sign of growth, people who are willing to adapt. So, one of the things that we absolutely believe with this is the value of human expertise is rapidly increasing. It's going through the roof. Experts are what is needed to continue to move this conversation forward. And while at the same time, the value of what AI can do for us is also rapidly increasing. Now, these can sound like contradictory ideas, but we don't believe so. We believe that these two things have to exist. And what we're looking for is with that intersection point, how human expertise and AI can work together to help where we're going. We believe that both are vital to making sure that we're still building things that matter, building the right things, and doing some of the things that only humans can do, while also leveraging the immense benefits of the efficiencies that we can get with AI. Because ultimately, AI is just a tool, not a replacement for human creativity. I loved math when I was in school, still do, still kind of a math junkie and all that. And I think it's fascinating that the math models that run AI are what are doing all of this prediction and token analysis and all of that and pattern recognition. That's what AI is really, really good at. And but it is not a replacement for human creativity. It can't think on its own. It can't do these things for us. And one of the things we've learned is what we like to call Sparkbox's number one rule for using AI in teams. And that's this. You can't make your efficiency another human's inefficiency. We have to be checking the output. The human has to stay involved and be responsible for what's going on. And that's kind of impacted everything that you'll see today and everything we're doing is the human is the reviewer, has to check, and has to be the one responsible for its success or failure. Now, there's be a lot of conversations about the future state of AI, but I think the most important point that I'd like to make today, and you can find those places to read them, there is no uh, shortage of people talking about where this is going. But I think the most important point to make right now is it probably is only going to get better from here. And when I think about that, I'm reminded of, this quote from, Orville Wright or Wilbur Wright, sorry. I'm a Dayton person, birthplace of aviation, all that fun stuff. And it's this: I confess that in 1901, I said to my brother Orville that men would not fly for 50 years. 2 years later, we were making flights. This demonstration of my inability as a prophet gave me such shock that I've since refrained from all prediction. I like this quote because I think it kind of says what a lot of is happening in the space of AI. No one really knows where this is going, and that's okay. But ultimately, it's all about the people. A good buddy of mine likes to say this: AI is not coming for our jobs. Experts who are good at partnering with AI will come for your jobs. Humans' expertise, it will remain central. And we believe that AI can be a tool, just a tool, that amplifies, not replaces these humans. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. Today, we're going to talk about what's possible today and not speculate too much about the future. We'll see real demos showing how AI integrates with human expertise. We're going to focus on what we have found that works, not the hundreds or thousands of ways we found that don't work. We've done a lot of experimentation with some of these things, and we have found infinite, almost infinite number of ways that this stuff will fail. We're going to have demos on a couple key areas: UX, content and data, design systems, and development. The kind of stuff we like to talk about anyway, right? This is what we're going to focus on today. Because really, we're looking for that intersection between human expertise and AI. This is where we're going to focus. We're going to bring on those experts and talk about how they're partnering with AI to accomplish the work they were doing. A couple ground rules that we need to go ahead and just get out of the way here when we're talking about all these things. The first is humans are still responsible. I don't think there's any getting away from that. The second thing is we can't sit this out. Our industry needs experts in the room where it happens. This is our moment to help shape the future. If we believe these things and we have been part of, been part of the web since really it got started, we absolutely have to participate in this conversation because opting out means that we lose any influence on our ability to control and shape the future. And the last piece of the ground rules is you may have to think about, and we may have to think about everything differently. It is possible that how we got here is not how things should continue. We are attacking some of the fundamental assumptions we've made about how this work gets done and some of the assumptions, not about the output, not about the end user, not about the goals, but how we do it. And I also just want to throw out there my last ground rule is we don't have all the answers. Nobody does. We're all in learning mode. And I think that's one of the things that makes this most exciting. I also don't want to gloss over the real concerns that exist in this space, from sustainability to environmental impact, ethical concerns, regulation, job displacement, economic impact, security concerns. These are all real. These matter. There is a ton of writing, a ton of great thinking out there, and we do a pretty good job of sharing those things and talking about those things. But being part of this conversation allows us to consider those and shape how AI is used in our space. This conversation matters because being part of the conversation allows us to dictate how we want to engage with these tools. There's also real fear that people have around this stuff. And I don't want to minimize that, but I think we can't possibly, as I previously mentioned, sit this conversation out if we want to be a part of what's going on in the future. So let's go ahead and get started with our first kind of conversation in place. Let's get Chris up here with me. Um, Let me find him and bring him up on stage with me. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Very good. How you doing, Rob?
I'm
Thanks.
doing really well. It's good to see you today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah, ready to dive in.
All right. You
Um,
go ahead.
so yeah, I'll start a little bit about me. I have been a UX slash web designer for over 25 years now, and I've had the opportunity to work with a wide variety of agencies and companies, and just really being able to see the web and products from a lot of different angles. And it's been amazing to see how it's changed over the years. And one of the things that I have always really valued is having the kind of data, the kind of information that empowers good design decisions, good user experience decisions, just like the best ways to move forward. So I was really excited to dive into how AI can help with that UX research process and how it can really help us with getting the best data possible to make those decisions. So I'm going to dive right in here with the start of how we're going to break this up. And just for simplicity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into two collections here. One is the data collection side, which is exactly what it sounds like, collecting all that raw data and information. It could be interviews, competitive audits, that this is just a small list of the different types of things that we can do there. And then, of course, going into that synthesis and organization, which is really taking that data, breaking it down, putting it into a place where we can start drawing conclusions from, start making recommendations, start like helping us to make that informed decision forward. So using it the right way, I've really found that AI can help a UX professional in both of these areas. So I'm going to dive into just a little bit into each of these areas, starting with data collection. And I'm going to focus on for this discussion, just focus on a competitive audit here. So as we kind of go through. So first, the data collection side of a competitive audit. And I'm going to use an example, completely hypothetical example here. Let's say we've been tasked with conducting research for a new major airline. So we're going to want to audit some major airlines currently and see how they approach, their presences, like maybe even specifically their homepage or some of those individual areas. So how do we get started with something like that? The first thing we want to do is start with a project setup. And for this example, I'm going to use ChatGPT. Obviously, there are a lot of different tools. They have different strengths, and it's good to explore those different tools. But for the purpose of this example, I'm going to use ChatGPT. And part of our job in working with AI is to make sure that whatever tool we're using, it has the information it needs for our partnership to be successful. So, really, everything that I have here, all of these elements, business strategy, demographics, again, this is just a small sampling, but all of this is context that we as UX designers would need as we're going into a new project anyway. So, we're not adding a step by informing AI with this. It's just making sure that it has the same information that we do. So, one of the things to call out is, like I say, existing data. That might be anything that you've done up till now. Maybe you've done some interviews, you have some statistics, some obstacles, whatever that might be. You want to give as much of that information as possible. And this is an effort that is often overlooked. For me personally, I've seen a huge difference in the kind of quality and value that I get out of using AI when I give it this kind of context and put the time needed to give it this type of context as we're going through. So after you get the general project set up, that's everything. Now we want to give it the context for whatever specific research effort we're doing. So in this case, we're talking about a competitive audit. So what is the context we would need? Like, what are the competitors? What are the different presences those competitors have that we want to include in our audit? What are the decisions we're looking for this audit to inform? Are we looking at this from a conversion lens or an efficiency lens? Maybe something else, maybe both of those, maybe something completely different. How deep do we want that analysis to go? And probably most important are examples. The more opportunities you can give examples of what a successful output looks like for AI, the better and more informed that AI will be. So how do we actually put this to work now? So on one hand, I have found a lot of value in just being able to challenge and check your assumptions, because that's always something that you want to be mindful of as a UX design, UX research, is making sure that your assumptions are challenged and checked along the way. So one way that we could use this is, now that it has all of that great context and data that we gave it, ask it, hey, with all this context, what are some things that I should really be targeting and looking for in this competitive audit? Now, here's a couple of examples of what it might say here that I have there listed on the right. But again, some of these I may have already thought of. Some of them I might not think is relevant, but almost always there's a couple that's like, wow, I didn't think about looking at it from that angle or that perspective. And it's that type of thing that allows you to kind of take a pause and look at something from a different perspective. And I found a lot of value in something like that. So that is challenging assumptions. But what if we go into like, how can we streamline this process? How can we do something to that effect? And here's just one example of what we might find. But what I have found is that AI really thrives when it's given a specific task with clear direction. So I, as a UX professional, I'm looking at Southwest. That's what the screenshot is here. And I find that there's this really great feature there where it has different tabs and you can look more than just flights, but also vacations and hotels and cars. And like, that's a really neat thing. So the first thing I'm wondering is that just an expectation for major airlines now, or is this something that Southwest is doing that is something unique or special? So I could ask a very specific prompt now that my project has all that context and say, hey, do these other competitors have this? And it would come back with, in this case, like JetBlue had it, Delta, United, but Frontier, that wasn't something it had. So that would be an example of how I can get some quick response just by having this partner with me as I'm going through to be able to help streamline and expedite the process. So here, these are just two quick examples of how this could work, but it kind of gives you an idea of how AI can really partner with the UX professional to make sure that both the quality and the efficiency of something like a competitive audit can really improve. So I'm going to shift now over to the synthesis and organization. I'm going to continue with the competitive audit. Okay, again, just to take this all the way through for this example. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shift over from this presentation, and I'm going to share FigJam. And I have that right here. So what I'm going to show a little bit is how the built-in AI that Figma has, and this particularly in FigJam, could help us to really work with the synthesis and organization. So this first thing is an example of what maybe a bunch of different data points that we collected across these 5 competitors might be. So the first step that I found that really works is like, okay, let's just start organizing this. And FigJam has this great tool. I'm just going to grab a couple of these just to show, but you can organize it and you can basically just say, I want to sort things by topic. And that's that AI. It has, all these little elements of the AI pieces. And I just want to say, like, I just want to sort all of these, if we selected all the stickies, and sort it by topic for me, just so I can start breaking down what are some of the topics and themes. And it might, for speed things up, I already have that already done here. So this is what it would come back with. All of these different categories. Starts really breaking things down and you start seeing some of those themes, like you see the loyalty program and you see some visual hierarchy and personalization and these different elements. But this is a little much. So this is where I, as the UX professional, is going to go in and be like, all right, I want to break this down. I want to look at this and make this into a little bit more of a usable breakdown that, just given that my exposure, because I've gone through all these competitors myself. So I'm going to take this and then I'll refine this into something that feels a little bit more usable here. So I broke it up into fewer categories. I separated out the different competitors that I've been reviewing so I can start getting a quick visual of where the different weights are and how this is going to be. And now this is where AI becomes even more useful. When it has all that data, great, it can do a little bit. But now that this data is more refined and specific, and again, going back to what I was saying, that specific direction really helps. This is where you can start getting some good feedback. So I'm just doing an example on the promotional approach here. So if we take that and do that same summary, so like again, just taking this and doing that same summary by topic, but now it's dealing with a very focused element. So it gives me what we have right here, where we have it broke it down by like an urgency, ancillary services, loyalty programs, and the promotional style, and started breaking out. So it broke it out into a much smaller grouping that then I can look at and draw some of my conclusions for. So I want to look at each of these, like for urgency, for instance. We found that Frontier really focuses on urgency, but the other ones don't. That's something that Frontier does that's different than the other ones. And each of them I drew my own conclusions from. And then once again, I want to go back and be like, okay, did I bring some biases into my evaluation through each of these steps? And this is where I really want to see, like, what would the AI say about this? So going all the way back to all the stickies of all the different airlines, I just asked for a summary, and that's another AI feature in FigJam here. And I'm just looking at this summary. I'm doing this at the end on purpose. I don't want this to influence my evaluation, but I do want it as a check because there might be some things in here that's like, wow, I didn't see that. Well, that element or this, I didn't see that. That didn't call out to me. So let me go back into that data and see if that makes sense. And it might not. But it's worth that extra check. And I have found that, boy, oh boy, does that really help because there might be something that you're glossing over because I'm used to that, or that was my experience, or whatever it is. And this gives you a chance to look back into that data. And it's been really helpful. So I'm going to stop my show. We'll go back into the deck here. And here we are. Okay. So now going back in here, let's just talk about the lift. So we've talked about the collection, we talked about the synthesis, the organization. On a whole, what are we seeing as the lift that AI brings to the UX research process? And I know I just gave a very small example there, but really what I have found in my experience is it has really helped my turnaround time. Like something that would take, like a competitive audit might take a week, 5, 6 days. I can cut that down by nearly half just by the little compounding, streamlining efforts that go all the way through that. But also, all of that project setup, a lot of the time goes into that project setup that starts to really add to those efficiencies, which has given me something that, like, honestly, I hadn't even really thought about before I dove in, which was the broader analysis. In that shorter timeline, I've been able to do more competitors. Maybe a typical one would be 4 to 5. I can broaden that out to 8 to 10, which those extra touch points can really bring some perspective that I might not have had before. And it's been very helpful, especially being able to do that in a more condensed timeline and feeling like I'm getting everything I want out of it. I mentioned challenging assumptions many times, and that's a big lift that I've found for this. And maybe one that is even more important than all of this is the ease of repeatability, because it's something that is often left on the table when it comes to UX research is doing it again, being able to say like, all right, 6 months, these competitors probably changed, a year, maybe they changed. But now I have all that infrastructure to really speed up doing another competitive audit and doing that and seeing where are things now. That might not have been something that was done at all. And now it's really empowering that. So a huge advantage to that. That's been great. So those are just some of the lifts, but really just to bring back to those two collections, just to wrap up here, all I covered here was competitive audits, and then within the synthesis and organization, just the affinity diagramming and the summaries and highlights. So there's so much more. And there's all these elements, and I'd love to dive in more to this. But this does give an example of how it could really help with the UX process, and the more I learn, the more benefits I'm finding from it. So it's been really exciting.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. I mean, I think that there's so many things that stand out to me in there. And, obviously one of them is like the way you're using it to double back and both check your assumptions and make sure that you're finding new insights that you may have missed.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and I know you've got, other examples, and these are just the start of these lists.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan to share any of these other, insights with anybody?
That's what I mean. Like, I would love anyone reach out if there's something in particular, because this is something I could just spend all day on and I love it. But I am going to go in, I'll do some extra videos on like, how would you set up the project? Because there are some nuance to that. And I've learned a lot and I'm continuing to learn, like diving into that. What are some of the details you want to give when you're setting up something specific around a competitive audit or a usability test. There's a lot of great setup for usability tests. So we could set up some other videos, some other posts to just give a little bit of detail there on what I found. And if anyone has to share some successes that they have, I would love to because I'm always learning on this too, and I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, Chris is the lead of our expedition team and done a fantastic job at that. Uh, so what's your one takeaway? Like, what's the one thing that you're like, if you take one thing away from what I shared today, it's,
For me, all right, if I would say if there's one thing to take away, it is that I would say to reiterate your side is that the human element of this, because we're designing for humans. So the human element of the UX side, whether it's research, design, or any of that, that is always going to be an integral part of it. So AI can help with things, but the human element is really critical to any of the success. And there are ways you can plug in something into AI and just say, just do my competitive audit for me. And it's going to give you something that looks like a very thorough competitive audit. But it's not going to give the kind of insights that really help inform good decisions. So that human element in this is going to be a critical every step of the way.
yeah. Somebody asks in the chat,
Mm.
they're still wondering about the risks and right way to handle sensitive business data that might be part of the context you're creating for AI.
That I think that's a great thing. And honestly, I don't think there's a final answer to that. But I would always lean on being cautious about sensitive business data. So when you're giving context, it might not be able to have the same level of context that myself as a human looking at this, I might have some things that I'm just not going to give the AI, even if it has all those things about how don't share this and don't allow this to be part of it. That doesn't really matter. Like protecting, companies' data is the most important. So anything that's out there publicly, great, use it. When in this competitive audit, that was an example where it's like, go to all these websites. That's something that I want to look at. But if there are some elements of the business plan that is confidential, that is just not something that the AI is going to be privy to. And if you can give some generalizations there, that's great, but you have to lean on security.
Yeah. And I
But
think
it's a great question.
the other piece of it is you have to be using paid accounts for these things if you're going to even go
Yeah,
near that stuff.
yeah,
Accounts that aren't training the model that and are just doing analysis in a sandboxed way. I know that's really important for
yeah,
all of our client data and all of that is, we have a list of approved tools that their terms and conditions are set up in such a way that they don't train the model and, they're responsible for protecting that.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, that's awesome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks so much.
No problem at all.
All right.
Awesome. We're going to move into our next example. We're going to go right through that. Uh, that we're going to get Marissa up here to talk a little bit about content and all of that stuff. So let me find Marissa. Where'd she go? There she
I'm
is.
here.
I gotcha. I gotcha. I gotcha. Sorry. I got to find the right button. I got to find the right button. Hey, Marissa, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. This is
Great.
fun. We're talking about AI today. So,
I know, I know.
yeah.
Um, well, hi everyone. As I mentioned, as Rob mentioned, my name is Marissa. I am a developer here at Sparkbox, and I'm also on the AI expedition team with Chris. So I have been exploring a lot of AI development practices and techniques lately, and that's kind of what we're going to chat about today. A lot of the hype around AI is that it can make humans better in some way. Maybe it can make us more efficient, help us get our work done faster, boost productivity, all very good things. But what do you do when AI doesn't know how to help you? Without the proper context, AI can sometimes get a little turned around and maybe even provide answers that are a little misguided. Have you ever felt the little alarm bells go off or gotten a little suspicious of an answer that you got back from a chatbot? That's a really common thing to have happen, and it is so common, in fact, that a lot of the major chat providers have this little disclaimer at the bottom of their screen that says, hey, we make mistakes. You might get an incorrect answer, so double check our work. Whether you are using AI at work or just asking it random questions at home, AI isn't immune to embellishing some answers. Part of our job as the humans, like everyone has mentioned so far, is to keep a critical eye on the quality and the accuracy of the responses that we're generating. To understand kind of why those incorrect responses happen, how we can go about reducing them, we do have to back up a little bit to talk about the technology that is happening behind the scenes. So up first, LLM stands for large language model. LLM and chatbot get used kind of interchangeably, but really an LLM is the brain of the chatbot, and the chatbot is one of the best implementations of an LLM. An LLM is just a computer program that has been trained to identify patterns in natural language so that it can return very sophisticated, believable sounding responses to questions. They're trained on general information, though. They'll know a little bit about a lot of things. This, however, can create some specificity problems. They're not going to know about your company's processes, your proprietary data, any of your specific workflows. If you try asking an LLM something really specific about the information or the data that you work with every day, even though it might not actually know the answer, it might produce an answer for you anyways. And when that happens, we get what's called a hallucination. It's information that sounds really plausible, but is factually incorrect. You could liken a hallucination in AI to when Hollywood decides to take some creative liberties when they're making films that are based on true stories or books. The risk of a hallucination might be higher when you are searching for niche answers that wouldn't be in the general data set of an LLM. So, to bring it back to our reliability and our accuracy issue, what tools or information can we give AI so that it works with our expertise instead of just deciding to hallucinate or make a guess? How can we have more confidence in the answers that AI is giving us? The good news is we can control the specific information that an LLM has access to. That's what a technique called RAG can enable. So RAG means retrieval augmented generation. With a RAG system, you can get all of the general LLM knowledge, but you're going to add and build all of this great context and knowledge to it. So if you imagine that you have some information or proprietary data that AI has never seen before, maybe you work in healthcare or you work with financial account information, out of the box, an LLM is not going to be able to reliably answer your questions about that data. So as an example, I created some new design system files that only exist on my machine. And in the screenshot, I went to Claude and I asked, what is the background color of a primary button? Now, because an LLM like Claude, the main goal in its life is to answer the question, Claude tried its hardest to respond, but ended up deviating. It decided to hallucinate a little bit, lost focus on the subject of the question that I asked. It ended up giving me information about the Australian government design system, which I can assure you is not the answer I was looking for. However, all of this behavior makes sense at this point, and it's not like I was surprised. Instead of being blocked by what an LLM like Claude doesn't know, what I did was build a RAG pipeline. A RAG pipeline can really supercharge a team's LLM data with their expertise, their specific data and content. So in this video, you're going to see a bunch of the phases of a RAG workflow scroll by. The first part of this pipeline is called ingestion, and it's just like it sounds. You are collecting new data. You could crawl the web to gather information. In my example here, it's just reading from the files on my machine. The system then processes all of that collected data, which just means that it's going to break it down into smaller chunks. And the smaller pieces are eventually stored in a database that AI can search through very, very quickly. The database that you create with this, that's where the magic is. That is your expertise. It's an additional knowledge hub that your LLM is going to get to leverage in a very controlled way. So once your database is built, RAGs can really start to shine because up until this point, you have your LLM, you built your database, but they're still separate. When you start querying and asking questions about your data, the RAG workflow will do what's called retrieval. And that additional step is really, really powerful for your LLM. So my RAG system needs to interpret my input, interpret my question, and it basically compares it to all of the information that it has in that database that you built. It gathers all of this semantically relevant information and will send it to your LLM, bridging that gap between your LLM and all of your context in your data. The RAG basically says, here, I found all this information for you. It should help you answer this question. At that point, your LLM can just use the retrieved data like it normally would in order to produce you an answer. It doesn't have to guess. It's got your trusted sources, your specific context data, everything that it would need to actually be helpful. Now that I built my little database here, I can run my RAG with the same exact question. What's the background color of my primary button? And this time I got a completely different response. Claude actually knew that it was BG Gold 600. In this RAG, I even had it return some source file information so that I could verify quickly, is that actually accurate? Where is this data coming from? That feedback loop was really quick as I was working. Now, I know there's a lot of nuances and a lot of terms that I haven't covered here, but the key thing is that RAGs can help solve specificity issues because we can give an LLM the context that it needs. LLMs can return more accurate responses because we are providing them the contextually specific data, the expert know-how, and that is going to help reduce your hallucination and it guessing. It allows AI to lean on us, leveraging our expertise. We clearly are living in a very AI-assisted world, but it is a two-way street. AI may make humans more efficient, but humans can also make AI more efficient and reliable as well. My time is up, but I'm very happy to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Marissa. That's great.
Of course.
The one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is the example you gave is specific to a design system.
Mhm.
Uh, what else can rags be used for? Like, is it just is there another example that you don't have to show, but just like talk about other things you've seen that we've used rags for?
Yeah, absolutely. The nice thing about RAG is that, like you said, it is very reusable. If you have text-based information somewhere, it's really, really excellent about being able to collect that data. So, for instance, I've seen implementations where Jira, like a Kanban board, is part of the context that this tool has. I've seen a plugin for Slack, so it's pulling Slack conversations as part of your context. It could also, it's almost like a supercharger for a search function as well. If you can point it at different data sources, this will really come into play and be helpful.
Yeah, what about okay, so another case seems to be of, using of old content or content that we've previously written that we published to help build a knowledge base to write new content from, right? So that we get that. Uh,
Sure.
let's say that's a use case. Do I need a new content management system to be able to use a RAG pipeline?
No, no, you do not need to change anything. There's API connections, there's integrations. You could manually export data for this. You do not have to change your CMS. This will work as is.
Wow. Okay. So really, like this is helping solve the AI is great, but doesn't work with my data problem that seems to be everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely helping, like I said, bridge that gap.
Yeah. Um, so do rags completely eliminate hallucinations?
No, Not completely. It should significantly reduce them, but if you think about it, it's only going to be as good as the information that you give it. So if you're pulling inaccurate data or you fill this database with, you know, content that's kind of conflicting, we can't really blame it for producing an answer that isn't totally right. It's still on the humans to make sure that we've verified these sources, we've verified the information, we are still responsible for it.
Yeah. And I guess the last question is, let's say that somebody sets up a RAG system. That RAG system isn't just specific to one person. Multiple people can leverage that system as a group, right?
hmm Yep, absolutely. Like I said, in the teams that I'm in right now, we have it set up in Slack, but in multiple channels. So it's got like the ultra, the ultra context. One person may have built it, but it's reusable across many, many teams.
Very cool. All right. Well, uh, yeah. One question from chat is, what did you feed the RAG in this example? Was it the component code? Was it the documentation? What was the thing you were chunking and
I
ingesting?
Yeah, I actually had several things. So I had TypeScript files, I had CSS files, and I had just markdown documentation files.
All the things. We gave
All
it
the
all the
things.
things.
I'm
All right.
trying.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you, Marissa.
Of course. Thank
Uh,
you.
I think one of the things that is going to become a theme here really quick, and we're already seeing it with Marissa's talk, is this basic question of when AI is failing, is it failing us by not giving us the answer we want, or are we failing it by not giving it the right context, not being specific enough? There's times when AI can infer things, and there's times when we need to be really clear about what we're looking for. We saw that with Chris's example about setting the context before that competitive audit, and we saw that with Marissa of actually giving it lots more context and then asking questions of it that way. And I think you're going to see that theme show up in our next example as well. Uh, let's get Benjamin up here with me. Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah, Ben is my business partner and also one of the smartest uh, people that I've come across. And he's, in addition to being a generally cool dude, he is a design systems expert. So we thought, Sparkbox does a lot of design system work, that we'd get Ben up here talking a little bit about some of this frontier space with design systems. I know that you run a biweekly like seminar. Well, go ahead and tell everybody kind of what's going on there.
Yeah, it's I call it a live design system research show or a collaborative learning experiment. Those are the kinds of words that I'm using. But it's basically like on Monday mornings, I work with a new co-host every session, every episode, and the co-host and I come up with a question that is a very niche design system question. And Monday mornings that goes out via email and also on social stuff. And then people have about 48 hours to answer. And if they answer, they get invited to a deep dive conversation on Thursday of that week. So this whole thing happens within 1 week. And so there's a couple days to answer. People who answer get invited to this Zoom call. Last week we had over 100 people on this Zoom. It was wild. And we all get into a FigJam file together and we unpack the data that we've gathered. So I'll have done a little analysis, usually Wednesday night before. And then we just dive in and we try to unpack it. And so we've done 68 episodes so far. So there's hours and hours of content out there, tons of raw data, FigJam files with all the notes in it. And lately we've been talking a lot about AI because it's like such a hot topic. And we had Nathan Curtis come on, we had Kevin Coyle, we had TJ Petrie on, and he's coming back again actually tomorrow morning to do a part two. So lots happening in there. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, why don't you kind of share some of the things you've been doing with design systems and AI?
Sure. Let me share my screen. I have two things to show, so I want to get both of them up at the same time here. So let's see. You should now be seeing both my Figma over here and my Claude desktop app. Do you see both of those? All right, thank you. I saw the thumbs
Yes,
up from
sir.
Marissa. Awesome. Thank you. Good to see everybody. I can see your faces now, finally. Awesome. So I was listening to Marissa's presentation, and so I hopped into Claude and I asked it this question: what is the color of a primary button in the primer design system? That's the one that I've been playing with. And so here's the answer that it gave me. And I've given it a ton of context. I'll show you that in just a minute. But it went and looked at the design system variables for primary button colors and found that there's this one, this sort of green, which is like GitHub's, the primer is GitHub's design system. So it found that it's that signature green, and that it uses that in both light and dark modes. And then the text color is always bright white. So it was kind of cool. I was just like, oh, I haven't just asked a simple question like that. So let me see what happens. So let me tell you what I'm working on. This is fun stuff. So I was just sketching out, like I was thinking, how do I explain what I chose to work on? And so I've been thinking about this idea of like a design system team has these things to do. There's way more than 4 things. If you work on a system team, you know that. But I put 4 of them here, right? Things like supporting teams who are adopting, things like fixing issues that are found in the system, maybe auditing the existing product UI and bringing those things into the system in a standard way, right? So those are the kinds of things system teams are focused on. Those are kind of like a core layer to product development, and in my opinion. And so then a little bit further outside, you have the product teams, and they're doing things like adopting the standardized UI from the system. There may be surfacing challenges with the system that, and offering those to the team, the system team. Maybe they're contributing some fixes if you've got good, friendly folks there. There may be refactoring some of their product UI based on the changes that things that are happening from the system team. And then sometimes maybe they're prototyping new UI with design system assets. And so there's lots of other things, of course, those teams could be doing too. But I wanted to focus on this idea of like, okay, if I'm not a Figma expert, but I wanted to do some prototyping and I wanted it to sort of line up with what the system itself already offers, then I wanted to experiment with that. And so what I've done here is I'm just in Figma, and I'm going over to from file to assets. So you can kind of see I have pulled in the primer web design system. So this is, again, is GitHub's design system. And if I click into this, you can see they've got all kinds of components, right? Here's a button component. So you can kind of see it's got all these properties. You can do all kinds of things with it, change the size and all kinds of stuff, right? So like you've seen probably 1,000 times in the Figma assets for a design system, all those things are in here, and there's lots and lots and lots of them. So it's a fairly robust system, which is why I chose it for this. So if we flip back to file, this file has a bunch of examples of those things in use too. So, again, like you've seen in many Figma files that do this kind of thing, they've got lots of great examples. So the Figma file is very robust here. I thought to myself, okay, I'm just gonna like hop in. I got this connected using TJ's Figma console MCP, which is like an MCP server that connects directly to Figma and lets you do a whole lot more with it than Figma's normal MCP server. And so it's pretty wild, the stuff that you can do. And so just so you can see, I've got a project going inside of Claude Desktop. And so all of these are chat sessions that I've been having with Claude. And down below, I've been taking things that as I work with the system, as I work with Primer inside of Figma, I've been saying, hey, you didn't do that quite right. Would you sort of document the things that we learned in this little session, and let's capture that as a markdown file in this project. And this way, like we can sort of like, it's essentially like helping Claude continue to learn. And the idea, my hope was, in this sort of example, was that if somebody who really knows the system would spend a little time with Claude, then what we would see is we could refine that sort of input, right? So the same thing that Marissa was saying is like context is king. And it doesn't matter how good your prompt is if the context you're giving the thing is not good, right? And so that's what this is about. It's like, can we use the design system itself in Figma as tremendous context for AI? And so I've been working with it. And so I started, let's see, here was my first thing. I was like, hey, go take a look at this Figma file. So it goes and it looks, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's a ton of stuff in it, right? This is Claude telling me what it found in the Figma file, tons of stuff, data, feedback, labels, buttons, avatars, all of it. And what I learned very quickly is that if I ask a question like this of the MCP, Figma Console MCP in Claude Desktop, I'm going to run out of context tokens very quickly, right? Like this takes a lot of memory essentially to do. And so I was like, okay, this is a big system. So what we need to do is make some little like context files that I was showing you earlier that have like overviews of what's in the Figma so that it doesn't have to constantly go back and query Figma. And so it's done that. And I've kind of worked with it to say, okay, give me an overview of the variables that are available. And so it's got this little file, we can peek at that if folks want to see it, but I want to get to the demo stuff. So I've been working with it. And what I said is like, I want to do a little prototype. So I gave it this prompt. I think it's here. Let me just see if I can find that too. Yes. So here's what I asked. I said, with all of this as context, create a new page in this file. I want you to design a simple sign-in screen that works in light and dark mode, and I want you to use the primer design system. And so like, that's it. That's what I gave it, right? Of course, all the context of the Figma, the design system assets in Figma and the markdown files that I'd been working with. And so this is what it generated in that very first opportunity. And I was like, oh my gosh, it looks a lot like what I would expect it to look like, Yay, we did it. And then I started digging in a little closer. Well, the first thing to note, so it did do my work with light and dark modes. You can kind of see, and they have a ton of different modes for color contrast and all kinds of stuff. But so you can see that what it generated right out of the gate, absolute first time, worked with modes, which was cool. But I started looking a little closer. I'm like, okay, well, that's supposed to be the logo, but it's just a circle. This is just, a piece of text. This is a frame, which is fine, but inside of the frame is just another piece of text and another frame and another piece of text and another frame. And so you can kind of see, like, if you're looking over here, as I click through these things, none of these are actually instances of a component, right? And so what I realized what it did is it made an image of what would be a sign-in screen, and it connected the variables, right? So like you can kind of see that, like, if I go in, let me think, where's a good way to see that? Sorry, I am not a Figma expert, so you'll have to bear with me as I unpack that. Let's see right here. So yeah, you can see right here, the fill of this is actually set to a variable, right? Which means it's not just being hard-coded a color value. So that's why the color modes are working, but it didn't make these instances of variables. And so I started playing with it a little bit more, and I was like, okay, what can we dig in, And so I'm not going to show you all the conversation, but I did a V1.5 here, and now you can see, like, these have turned purple, right? That means they're an instance of a component. And so now we've got an input that's actually has a label, right? So like contextually, these are related, and you can start to see all the variants up here and all the properties that we can adjust on this thing. So now we're actually using components from the Figma assets to construct these screens. And so I was like, okay, this is good. We're making progress. And so I continued to work with it. I was able to sort of quickly get it to make a few little design refinements in terms of widths and things. And then I got the logo in and all that. And so then I was like, okay, that took some work to get this one little screen. And I was thinking to myself, I could have asked one of our designers to just do this and it would have been done in like 3 minutes, right? So was that worth it? Probably not. But I was teaching Claude as I went through this process, right? So the next thing I did, I said, okay, I was like thinking, okay, what if somebody clicks this forgot password, right? So I went and I said, make a forgot password screen. And so this is what it did. This is like version 1.1. I basically had to have it do one thing, which was make this input full width, and that was it. And everything else was made just, you can see these are all instances over here in the left. We've got, text inputs that are connected with actual labels, all of that stuff. Like it just kind of worked right away on the second one. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then I started thinking, well, what if I don't have an account and I want to click? So back on sign in screen V2, you can see that there's this create account too. And so I was like, okay, what would a create account? So I just set it. I did this literally this morning, and it basically did this. And then I went and looked at the GitHub account, create account page, and I was like, oh, they have some nice content, like micro content as explainers. And so I asked it to add that in. And it turns out that these text input components actually have something called, where is it? So they have the placeholder text, they have the label text, and then they actually have an additional bit of information that you can use. Sorry, a caption right here. You can turn captions on or off, and that just lets you put some explainer text below the input. And so in a matter of like about 2 minutes, I was able to have it do this, right? Now all of a sudden it's learned and it's getting better with each thing that I ask it to do. And so then I was just thinking, you know what? Let's just imagine that GitHub's having their birthday. And so I was like, I want to make an RSVP for the GitHub birthday party. And so I just quickly gave it that, and it did this in about 30 seconds. And then I was like, okay, that's great, but it's not happy enough because this is a birthday. So make it a little bit happier. I want you to make it double width, and I want you to put a fun image in. And so I made an image out in Midjourney of Octocat blowing out his birthday candles or whatever. But you can kind of see like very quickly it was able to just kind of adjust these things and make space for them. And I was able to kind of evolve this design in sort of an interesting way in just a matter of minutes. And then I realized the image wasn't a component in the original version. So like if we look here, oh, there wasn't, sorry. Yeah, I did a version where it just stuck the image in. Then I was like, let's make that into a component. So it was able to make an image component that lets me do things like I can set it to be landscape instead of portrait. I can make it a square, right? And so I was just telling it, hey, I want there to be some configuration on this image input. I want it to be this, I want it to be that. And it was just like boom, 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 chiming through, make a new component for me. So all of that is cool. And I thought it was great. And then I realized that, and sorry, Rob, I know I'm probably going a little bit long here, but I'm trying to go quick. But I feel like this is only a third of the job, right? Is like making things. And so then I thought, what if I have to go to my boss and present some of the work that I've done? Could I use some of this work and some of the things that we've done in learning with Claude to sort of like make a presentation? And so, because I know Figma has Figma slides. I've actually never used Figma slides. I'm a Keynote guy. And so I was like, all right, I want you to make me a presentation. I literally just said, make me a presentation in Figma slides that shows the things that we've learned in this process. And so this is my little presentation on, of course, there it goes. Okay. Authentication screens. You can see we had to do all this work. We migrated. Here's the things we did. Here's the anatomy of a sign-in screen. I didn't give it any of this content. It just looked back through the markdown files and was like, here's the things I've learned doing this project, And so now it's showing us like it does. Sorry, this isn't quite fitting on screen, but you'll see, you can get the idea. It's showing me here's the actual component names for these specific elements. Anyway, cheesy, but kind of cool, right? Like the idea that we can not only make the work itself, but even have Claude help us present that work in a meaningful way, because that is a big part of what we're trying to do. So that's what I got.
It's pretty cool. So this is part of the stuff that goes into design system stuff. Like, do you foresee like taking those markdown files where you put that learning in context and actually turning those into design system assets so other people could use them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that in my mind is like, this is where it's like, what do we have to do to our design systems to make them really ready for our human partners in product, out in consuming or subscribing teams to be able to understand and know how to use a system. But also, what do we have to do with those systems to make them really good context for AI? And so that's going to be probably, there's a lot of overlap in those things like you showed at the beginning, Rob, but there's also things that are pretty unique to what an AI would need to be able to do this stuff. So for me, this was like a learning experiment to say like, okay, how ready is this system to be used in this way? And I think after you do this a few times, right, it's pretty easy to imagine you could come up with a list of things. Okay, after we do this, here's the stuff we need to make sure we also do in our systems work that enables it in a way to sort of like unlock a lot of this other value.
Yeah, what do you think those gaps are? Like, where do you see the common gaps of, how design systems get built and what needs to be done then to make them, I'll say AI ready, for lack of a better way to put it?
Yeah, it's a tricky question because I think it's like first of all, like Well, like last week in the question in that episode where we asked the community of people, we asked over 1,000 people, got 150 answers, and 150 of these folks said they were about middle ground is how they felt in terms of how prepared their system was to be used like this. But the reality is most people aren't actually doing this with their systems, so they don't really know how ready they are. So that was more of a question that was saying like, hey, how ready do you think you are? GitHub Primer is like a very robust system, right? And so even one like this, I needed to do quite a bit of work to kind of get it established, right? Like to have it learn a few things about how these components actually work. So I think it depends on one, how far along your system is, and then two, like what the heck do you actually want it to be able to do with AI? So depending on like some people may not want a prototype, so this kind of work might not be relevant for them, right? But
Yeah.
I think you could easily use it almost as is if you could say, go look through all of the existing designs and tell me, are my colors bound to variables or not, right? Like it'd be very easy to have it. It would do this out of the box. It would just go look and see what's not sort of set up to sort of be cohesive in that way, like using variables, using the actual components under the covers. So I think things like that, assessing system would be pretty easy to do. And there's even plugins now like Figma Lint, I think is a good one that you could use that will do some of that work very specifically for you too. So
Yeah. All right. So let me ask this. And I know you don't have this in your example. What about going the other way? So now I've got good Figma and I want to go to, you know, front end code, components that can be used by a development team.
yeah, I
Like,
mean, that's why I was asking in the chat what Marissa was putting into the RAG for her example, because I do think like it's I don't think it's much work to connect from here to something else. Obviously Figma has Code Connect, right? So there's some of that stuff that if you want to use their sort of workflow, you can do. But I know a lot of folks are having good success in other ways too, with Claude Code in particular, getting these things connected. So if you have a good repo, a storybook you can point it to that has not just the design documentation or examples like I do in Figma assets here, but code examples and good readmes on how to use those components and stuff. It's pretty close to being ready. So
yeah, I mean, it seems like I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're the design system expert. I'm just, just Rob. Um, but like it seems to me that one of the things that I think is coming is design system teams having to start thinking about how their consumers are going to use AI and start building for that to make sure that they get good results with it.
yeah, I mean, I think every system team should be thinking about that right now. Like that's probably the reality. And what's nice is like it's kind of like accessibility, right? Like if you cut a hole in the side of the sidewalk where there's no ramp and you put a ramp in, that's helpful for everybody. It's not only helpful for people who have a wheelchair, right? And so it's the same thing here, right? Like adding more context, more clarity to your docs is not going to hurt your users in any way. So I think it's a smart thing to be doing.
Ooh,
And what's wild is like, I mean, we saw Chris's example, right, where he was looking in FigJam using some of their AI tools. And then here we're using Figma again, but we're using a third-party MCP server, right? All of the tools themselves have their own little interesting ways to do this stuff. And sometimes it's just a matter of like getting them all connected. And so, yeah, anyway, cool stuff.
yeah, no, that is pretty cool. That's just fascinating. I know all this stuff is still evolving and but I love what you just said about like the idea of, hey, enabling, the AI to do well will also benefit the humans who need that same documentation. And if you're not prepared for one, you're probably not prepared for the other.
I think it's true. Yeah, I mean, I
Wow.
think that's what I'm taking away from all of these examples, honestly. And there's like futures that are like a little bit scary, right? Like, I mean, what does it mean if system, your design system enables people who are not Figma people to do design, right? Well, there's like, yeah, that's a reality that I think we're gonna have to face as a community. Is like, what does that mean? How does my job change, in that world? Um, I think there are folks who are doing this kind of work with hopes that we don't actually design experiences. We design the ability for a model to create an experience on the fly when a user needs something, you know?
Mm.
And so like if that's a future that you think your product would be well served with, this is the kind of work you have to be doing now, is like defining the patterns and like being really clear so that the stuff we're building later is actually good, you know?
I mean,
So
not to mention, I don't know that you and I have ever worked with an organization where we haven't found, of any size, where we haven't found somebody who's not supposed to be designing things.
well, that's
They're
just
there.
it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Like if you count the number of engineers in organizations compared to the number of designers, right? Like, I mean, it's oftentimes like overwhelmingly engineering. But if you look at design system teams, oftentimes it's a little bit different. It's a little bit heavier on the design side, you know? And so I do think organizations are looking at this and thinking, okay, we can concentrate some design expertise here so that we can see a little bit more of that benefit spread around, you know? I mean, I don't think that's a reason to not have designers working on product for sure, but it is a way I think to get to raise the lowest bar, you know, in orgs. If you simply just don't have folks available in those places, like let's at least empower them to make some good choices, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the ball game, right? Um, all right. Well, hey, thanks, Ben. I appreciate it a lot.
Sure thing. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep moving along here. The next up, I'm gonna get John up here with me, who's gonna talk a little bit more about the development side of the house, kind of like you would traditionally think about it. Um, there he is right there. There's John. John, get up here. How's it going, buddy?
Hello.
The very nice Sparkbox logo you have in your background.
Yeah, it's just covering up my ugly wall back here.
I didn't say anything. I just assumed that you work in a room that, Sparkbox logo is there. You ready?
I am. I am. All right. So, hello, everybody. I'm John. I'm a technical director here at Sparkbox, and I've been building websites and software for quite a while now. Started a long, long time ago building websites with Dreamweaver and then Flash, and I've watched many quote unquote no code solutions evolve over the years, but as many of these solutions come and go, it always seems to come back to code. So now we have the ability to generate code with natural language, and people with no prior programming experience are now able to build things that never would have been possible in the past. AI tooling has been quickly removing barriers that have previously stopped people from executing on their ideas and building useful things. Personally, I think that's pretty awesome, but the thing is, it's not without risk. Without that prior experience and lessons learned from making many, many mistakes in the process of honing your craft, those risks can greatly increase. So, today I'm going to talk about how we can partner with these tools using tried and true development practices to leverage our expertise and get more done without sacrificing quality. AI coding tools do offer real opportunities to do more, better, and faster, but we have to be vigilant and guard against the pitfalls. And this is what separates the engineering from the vibe coding. So you may have heard the term vibe coding over the past year. Uh, Vibe coding is using coding agents to write your code, focusing mostly on the creative process of building something from the outside with little or no attention paid to the actual code that's getting written behind the scenes. Basically, you're acting as a product owner, focusing on the vision and treating your coding agent as your developer. And so that's all good, but when things like security and maintainability are important, you probably just don't want to rely on vibes alone. So let's talk about an alternative here. AI-driven development is when human experts leverage coding agents within good software development practices to increase your ability to get things done without sacrificing quality. Essentially, you're taking an AI first approach to the development process and delegating work to coding agents, but you're not running on vibes alone. You're leveraging coding agents to do the things that they're good at, like helping with research and brainstorming, and of course, writing code. But you're also leveraging your own strengths of critical thinking, discernment, and good taste to evaluate and validate the finished product. So delegating work to AI allows you to focus on higher leverage activities. And if you do it right, you can improve both speed and quality. We just need to make sure that we're delegating our tasks and not our critical thinking. So let's talk about how AI tooling affects our processes. So surprise, this is actually a talk about good software development practices. A lot of the practices that are good for humans to follow for developing software are good for coding agents to follow as well. So first, let's talk about planning. Uh, Most coding agents these days now have built-in planning features that will help you create or help you plan a task before you execute on it. For any complex work, I would recommend building a plan first before asking your coding agent to implement it in code. And this allows you to build an understanding of the work that the coding agent will do, explore potential issues and challenges, and correct any bad assumptions that the agent might make. You can treat it as an interactive and iterative process. You can give the coding agent the necessary context for the changes you want to make, have it create a plan, review that plan for problems, provide feedback to the agent, and have it update the plan. Uh, so it's much easier, excuse me. So it's much easier to review a plan in plain text and identify potential problems up front than it is to review later through code changes. You can catch a lot of things up front to refine the scope of the changes and help keep the agent on the rails. So next, let's talk about documentation. With the help of AI, we no longer have excuses to not write good documentation. Now, different tools expect different document structures by default, but one commonality is that they all tend to do well with Markdown files, which coincidentally are easy for humans to read too. My cat just decided he wanted to join us. He's in my lap now. Um, so this leads to my next point, which is optimize your documentation for humans first. If your docs are easy for humans to understand, they'll be easy for coding agents to understand as well. You can absolutely use coding agents to help write your documentation, but make sure to review those docs to ensure that they make sense, that they're accurate, and that they're capturing the right things. In particular, make sure you're capturing the why and not just the what. Uh, Coding agents are very good at documenting what, but we want to understand the reasoning behind it, and this helps both humans and coding agents understand the purpose, which makes them stay on track. Next, I want to talk about AI-driven development. So in the age of AI coding, testing is more important than ever. Coding agents have gotten a lot better at writing software, but they still tend to make mistakes. They'll hallucinate, they'll make bad assumptions, they can make unrelated changes, and they can break existing functionality. And all these things add up over time to make the application harder to maintain. So this is where testing comes in. Unit tests are great for AI tools because they encourage modularity and they're fast to run and get feedback on. And you can write out your specifications in plain language and have the agent write failing tests before they implement the code. This helps prevent agents from breaking things when adding or changing functionality and gives them a feedback loop to self-correct when they make mistakes. Next, I want to talk about Git practices. So version control has always been important to development, and it's absolutely crucial when working with AI agents. It's important to have save points that you can revert to, in case things go off the rails. And it can be tempting to let coding agents make large changes and just commit them all at once, but I'd recommend working and committing in smaller logical increments that are still manageable for humans. This makes the history of changes easier to understand, and it makes it a lot easier to track down changes that may have introduced bugs later. Also, if you create logical atomic commits, these commits can be used as a reference for the agent when it's doing new work. So, for example, when creating a new component, you can tell the agent, use this previous commit as a reference and create this new component following the same architectural patterns. And this gives the agent some guidelines to follow and helps keep it on track. Now, with your commit messages, make sure you're using descriptive messages that both humans and agents can easily discern. And like with documentation, if you use coding agents to summarize your commits, they tend to focus on what the changes do and not why the changes were made. Including the why is incredibly important when you look back at a set of changes later to understand the purpose. And finally, I want to talk about code review. So this is the huge piece that separates AI-driven development from vibe coding. Computers cannot be accountable for the code they write. Humans must be accountable. We're responsible for the code that we generate with coding agents. As Rob said earlier, we can't make our efficiency someone else's inefficiency. That means we need to be the first ones to review it. Basically, don't make someone else review your AI generated code if you haven't reviewed it first. Ultimately, we need to take the time to make sure that the agents are following our coding standards, using good patterns, and not introducing unnecessary complexity. Without proper guardrails, using AI to build anything substantial will inevitably create tech debt over time. And tech debt is hard to maintain and will slow down velocity over time. So remember, you're not a bottleneck here. You're a defender of quality that will help keep the project moving, not just today, but months and years down the road. So ultimately, AI-driven development is a partnership between human experts and machines. By leveraging our own expertise alongside the abilities of AI, we can make more of an impact than ever before. AI can help you move faster, but speed without direction is just drift. We bring the direction, we bring the judgment, and we bring the expertise. And that's how we make this partnership successful.
That's great. I mean, I like the term AI driven development, right? Like it's the human driving what the AI is helping us generate, right? Like that's the game. Okay, so you've been using these tools for a while inside real projects. What kind of lift are you seeing? Like what are you seeing the efficiency gains that we all hear about?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of hype online if you follow it. I have seen efficiency gains. It really, it can be dependent on the kind of work that's being done, and based on the rule set that you kind of give the AI to follow, so that you're not, again, generating technical debt later. But we've used it for like migration related tasks, and it has drastically cut down the time. Again, that's a place where developing a very solid plan up front, makes a lot of difference. So I've definitely seen quite a bit of reduction in effort for migration related tasks. Building components and things like that. As long as it has a good set of guidelines to follow, and you have to make sure that you specify things like, focus on accessibility, focus on responsiveness, and all the things you care about. But you can definitely see a pretty good lift there, a good improvement of the amount of effort that takes, reducing that. But it's only as good as the context you give it, and again, we need to be reviewing the output so that, the gains that we make today and this week remain gains over the long haul, right? Because that's when things start to add up and compound.
Yeah, what about you know, coming into a new code base? How much are you using or have you seen benefit of using these tools to kind of just understand what's going on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Coming into a new code base or trying to understand a large code base, it's absolutely helpful to use these tools, whether it's Cursor or Claude Code or something like that, to just kind of help you search through the code base, I find that these tools can search much faster than I can. And of course, there's always, the risk of hallucinations, but it's very, very good at giving you kind of, a direction forward and tracking things down, asking it to explain architectural patterns if there's not good documentation, things like that. So yeah, definitely, when coming into a new code base or coming into an existing code base, I've definitely found it to be helpful.
And I think that, one of the things that we've learned as well is that, you know, when you find a place where these AI tools aren't giving the best answers, we can leave clues so that if we next time it does, right? Like we can leave, additional markdown files or context files so that AI gets better over time, right? And a team can help maintain those pieces.
Right. Yeah. So that goes back to the documentation piece, right? So um, when particularly when you run into challenges or run into gotchas, making sure that those things are well documented. It helps not just us as humans to be able to look back at those things, but it also helps to be able to show those to a coding agent so that they don't run into those same things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate it. All right, friends, here we go. Uh, so what we've seen today, right? Like we had some examples from Chris about AI and UX research. Marissa talked about RAG pipelines. Ben talked about design systems. Uh, and John kind of shared a little bit about, AI-driven development and practice and how to do that. In every single demonstration, like what you saw is one of the patterns is AI handled the repetitive work and the things that we find it's really good at. Humans focused on the strategy, creativity, and the judgment. That is the partnership that seems to be working today. In every single example, the human expertise was absolutely essential to getting to where we needed to be. We were providing that context, providing that data, giving AI and the tool the ability to give us better answers and better output. And that leads to this, right? Experts who have time to focus on strategy, creativity, and judgment. Using these tools can create efficiencies to hopefully allow those experts to have the time to focus on the things that truly make us special as humans, right? Do the work, do the stuff we've all really, really enjoyed, right? To find that, place where human expertise and AI intersect. So what's next? Where do we go from here? Should we be excited? Should we be scared? What's the deal, right? And just to, clear the deck, I'm super excited about where we are. This is some of the coolest stuff that we've seen in my career. I've been doing this for 20 some years, studied computer science back in the late 1900s. Um, and I'm really excited about what's going on. Like, there has been over my career, like small evolutionary changes with some revolutionary change, but there is no doubt in my mind that where we are right now is a massive change for how the web will be built for what's next. And, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to help shape the future, how these tools are used, and what we do next. And one of the things I'm also looking for is places where AI changes the fundamental assumptions that we have accepted as fact. One of the best examples that I love from this is talking about the three constraints of software that have existed since the 70s. The first is a mythical man month, that you can't keep adding developers to a project and keep expecting to get faster. At some point, there's too many people and you can't do that. That may be going away with these tools. Velocity slows down as complexity increases. As John kind of says, like was sharing, like some of these tools do such a great job of helping, breaking down the complexity and making sure that we as humans can understand what's going on. And the last piece of constraint is 80% of the cost of software happens in maintenance, right? Those three things have existed for so long. And if we take them away, what does that change? How are we fundamentally going to have to build software into the future or think about how we do that? And the other big question that we need to kind of deal with is what do we do with the time? If AI is going to free up cycles, We're getting work done faster. What do we do with that extra time? Where do we add value? How do we use it? How do we not just, blow up our complexity and, use that cycle and just stay, like do more work and do nothing else, right? But what valuable things can we do? Can we focus more on strategy, invest in the relationships we have with the humans? Do we take on more work? What are those questions? It's the question isn't if AI works, it's what we do with the time we gain. Um, Natalie on our team wrote a great article about this. It's available on the Foundry. And at the end of the day, I fundamentally believe that the future of the web is human. I'm long on humans. I always have been. I learned early on in my career that people were the reason for the project, not something that was impeding progress. The web is one of humanity's greatest technological inventions and has allowed for an infinite amount of information sharing. Humans are the ones the web is built for. They've who built the web and who will continue to use the web going forward. Computers don't need interfaces, humans do. They're an integral piece of what is needed. That doesn't mean that how we use the web isn't going to change. It's changed so much since I started working on it back in the early 2000s. But that's why being part of this conversation is so stinking important. People are the reason all this stuff exists. The most interesting part of every project is the people. And that doesn't change with AI. And AI will not help us figure out if the problem we're working on is even worth solving. It's only a tool. And I would argue that, the things that create that isn't great is the responsibility of the human driving the AI. But regardless of all that, there is an opportunity. There's an opportunity to figure out how these tools can be useful and help humans focus on problems only they can solve. And that's what I'm really excited about. The goal when we use AI in our process is not to replace the human interaction. Our goal is to amplify the human interaction and expertise. The future won't be built just by machines. It'll be built by people who know how to use those machines well. And ultimately, we still have to fight for simplicity. This is something I can't stress enough. One of the things I've seen over and over again is because things may be easier to create, that we will just create more and more complexity over time. And we have to be careful. Simple always wins. Complexity is the natural direction of things. So, what I want to stay with and end with here is, friends, I need you to stay curious. I need you to keep an open mind to what's possible. Stay curious about what AI is doing today and where it's going. We don't have all the answers, but we're committed to asking the right questions. Um, Sparkbox is spending a lot of time on this because we believe that this is going to be a huge part of what we do. We're starting to see how AI integration and helping organizations figure out what their AI integration strategy is, figure out what the practical implications that add business value today. How do we take these things, just like we showed today, and like get more efficient or add value or add things for our clients? We're staying human-centered approach into our AI adoption, and we're helping other teams empower their teams with the right AI tools used the right way. Um, this is going to continue. This is where it's at. All right, we do have some questions. Let me get my friends back up here real quick. Uh, just take 1 second. I just got to click this magic button a few times, and ooh, there's all my friends, right? So cool beans. All right, yeah, everybody wave. So there is a couple questions. Um, and let's go around the room for this because I think everybody probably has a different answer that's probably valuable. Is how are you staying up on all these areas? What are you reading? Where is how are you possibly keeping up? And I know this is a topic that comes up so often because where do you get started? How do you keep up? Because this stuff's everywhere and there's so much noise. How are you finding the signal? Let's start with Marissa.
This is a tough one because, like you said, it's everywhere right now. Um, there are a couple of newsletters, I guess, that I'm a part of. So sometimes I'll scan like an email newsletter, see a topic that I'm kind of interested in, and I'll just do my own research on it. I have a couple of Slack channels that I am in where we are constantly sharing articles with each other. That's always really helpful. And then honestly, there's some social media where, again, people are writing on this and sharing resources and articles. That's how I have been keeping up on it. And honestly, it's tough because in order to really feel like you have a grasp on it, you have to be able to go in and do the work as well.
Yeah, just to add to that, right? Like I believe your answer was is have good community of humans that are talking about this stuff. The robots aren't going to help us keep up,
No,
right?
no.
The communities we build of other people and those relationships is how I think that's going to be a theme that we're going to hear, but that's what I keep coming back to. Go ahead, John. How are you keeping up?
Humans. Yeah, so I tend to follow folks on social media that are active in the space, people that are building things. In particular, a couple of folks, Boris Cherney, who is the creator of Claude Code. Follow him and get a lot of good updates around what's going on that way. There's another guy, Eric Elliott, who is very heavy in the AI driven development space. I would recommend taking a look at his stuff. There are quite a few others, but yeah, just trying to identify those folks that are very active in the space and following them.
Chris?
Yeah, obviously I concur with what John and Marissa said. There's a lot of great groups and things like that that you can connect with. Just having those discussions is like an opportunity to open new paths to like, hey, is this something I want to dive into? So it's just a lot of fun for exploration. As far as just like on like, just normal reading for me, I really like the independent resources. I'm a UXer, so I'm a big Nielsen Norman reader. They have a lot of great data on that from a UX perspective, and AI is something obviously that comes up a lot with them. So it's good because you're getting that objective resource. There's a ton of information out there in AI that's put out by the AI companies, which is very useful, but I really like to see it from those independent resources. MIT has a ton of information out there right now that you can read on their blogs. Deep Learning AI has a blog, I think it's called The Batch, that has a lot of great. So just kind of like just reading general articles, but staying in touch is obviously huge. So.
Yeah. How about you, Ben?
Um, I mean, I don't want to be repetitive, so I'll give a +1 to what's been said. For me, it's definitely been people. I would say too, though, with the question like this, you shouldn't feel like you have to. Like there's too much to read. Like nobody knows everything. Everybody feels behind. So if you feel behind, you're not alone. Um, and it's totally okay for you to take a breath every once in a while and sort of step away from this stuff too, right? If that's what you need. And I definitely need that every once in a while, like just being honest. Um, you know, the stuff is coming, of course, and it's going to change how we work and how we live. But also, by virtue of being in the space that we're in, all of us on this call, we're probably in the top, 10% of folks in the world who understand it, even if you feel like you have a lack of understanding. So you shouldn't feel like you're behind. You're never, it's never too late to start digging in and experimenting. And I feel like honestly the best thing is just to try stuff. That trying will like lead you down a path of asking questions, which helps you discover the resources that are going to be relevant for you in your context. So I don't know if that answers if that's helpful or not.
No, I think that brings up a really good point. A couple years ago, a good buddy of mine, Larry, was talking about all of this stuff, and I was like, "How do I even get started? Where is that?" And I'll never like what he told me then, and I'll tell you now is, like this eye-opening moment. He's like, "Play with it." He's like, "Anytime you come up to a repetitive task that you do every single week or every month or every so often." Spend 5 minutes trying to see if AI can help you do it. And if it can't, bail on it and go do it the way you've always done it. But chances are you'll find a piece that it can help you with, and then you'll iterate and you'll learn a little bit. And either way you'll learn. And he's like, the trick of it is even if it can't do exactly what you want it to today, try it again in a couple months. Spend 5 more minutes then. He's like, in the library of skills that you will build and you pay attention to how it's iterating will change everything. And it's been so true. The amount of times where I jump into an you partnering with an AI on something just to see what it can do. And it's like I've learned like, oh, maybe it can't do that, but oh, it got real close here. And then those things build on top of that, and it's just stacking Legos on top of Legos. And before you know it, it's like I have a tool belt of things that I know I can do. And that opens up other doors and other possibilities. Um, and a big plus one to, at least the people in this call and the other people that participate with the AI expedition team of just sitting there every week and watching what people are playing with and how they've found ways to do things has always led to other conversations about like, oh, what if we just combine these two things? Or what if I take what you shared and then combine it with this thing that I tried? And like that's been a force multiplier for Sparkbox of starting to actually impact of, of experimentation to this is how we can put these things in practice. Um, but that's again, that's community. That's building context and community with people that, are experimenting together.
I'll say one other thing that's helpful for me is like I'm trying to find the things that I really despise doing and automate those with AI. And that gives me like a different kind of energy to go figure it out. Like if I can do this and never have to do it again, I'm
Right.
in. I'll take an hour to do that, So I think that's like another angle,
Oh yeah. No, I mean, that's, and I think that's the other thing that's a lesson learned for all of us is it's really hard to either automate or leverage AI if you don't understand it. Like, and that's one of the things that like we have to be looking for those opportunities of things we understand and we dislike doing. Those are great candidates.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to jump in one more time, Rob.
No, go
There's
for it.
this there's this phrase that AI engineers use, which you've heard before, but they use it in a specific way. The phrase is flying blind. And when you're training a model, a lot of times these things, the way they're built is like you actually don't understand why something is working, right? Like it may give you the right answer and you don't know why. And if you never figure out why and you continue building on that thing, you're in this space which is called, flying blind, which is like essentially like you don't actually know what's really happening, and the reliability of the answers and your ability to sort of validate the authenticity of the answers gets lower and lower the more you're doing that. And so as you layer these things together, it's actually really important, I think, to stop and go figure out why it worked and what did you have to change to make it fail, so now you know how to make it work the next time, things like that, just like that real curiosity about like, okay, it worked this time, but when I ask it again, is it going to work? You need to know that it will, So that's like a really important part of maybe a different kind of learning here, because the tooling is so, it's just, there's so much happening that it's hard to comprehend it all like in one brain. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I've been working on that second brain, haven't got there yet. Another question that's in the chat here is, you know, uh, talking about like, is there any, Ben, this is probably a little for you, but we'll go to Marissa as well. Is there any publicly available examples of AI-friendly design systems that you found, besides maybe the one that you showed?
Yeah, I can start and then I'll pass it to Marissa. Like, I think that it's so dependent on what you're trying to accomplish, and so like if you want a prototype, you probably need a little bit more context around the use of these things in specific ways. If you just want to have your consumers be able to like talk to your documentation so they don't have to go search a static doc site, they can just ask it questions like a chat. Well, that's a different kind of thing that your documentation needs to do, right, to be able to sort of serve that purpose. So it's kind of dependent on that. I don't know of like one system that does all of it well. I do think Primer was pretty good to work with, and I did try a couple others that didn't work that well. So like, a little experimentation. I think that the trick is like using these tools to evaluate your own stuff. And like literally the first time I built a little prototype in this way, I just the very next step I took was like, what's right and what's wrong about what you just did. Like asking it to go evaluate itself. And we made a markdown doc together of like 14 things that we needed to fix. And then we just sort of worked through that. And each of those was a lesson learned that sort of we created more context with, and then it was able to do this much more efficiently in the future. So I think it's just that iteration of but it can't do it on its own. It needs a person with it, sort of guiding it through that process. And that's that sort of like pairing of things. I dropped a few other resources in the chat there that are great ones. Christian's been writing about this stuff for the last few months, and it's really cool what he's got going. Nathan's plugin, Anova, and his Specs plugin, which is Anova's sort of going to, I think, will eventually replace the Specs plugin, but it does a really nice job of turning components into data. And that sort of like really tight format of just like, I think it's either YAML or Markdown or something that he's using, but it's like that data is compact, it's very portable. You can take that kind of anywhere and then use it to sort of like enable AI essentially. Like it's very machine readable.
Yeah.
So things like that might be helpful.
What
Marissa,
about you,
go.
Marissa?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what Ben was just talking about, like Markdown files, one of the rag pipelines that I was like experimenting with had a web crawler and I could point it at GitHub repos. And because the design system I was like pointing at had documentation files that were in fact in Markdown, it was really easy to grab that kind of
Mm.
context. Now, yes, it's in a very specific like rag workflow type of thing. But I think if you can convert some of your code files into Markdown with a rag pipeline, the Markdown, the text-based information, that can really help with your context and getting accurate answers too.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, those are the questions we have. I I know that every single one of the people up here, I had to rein in as far or help rein in as far as how much content they wanted to share because we would have been here for a week with all the things they were excited about sharing. So one of the things that I know that each of them are going to do is they have a ton of content that they would love to be able to share, and they're going to work through and publish some of that content, and that'll be available on the Foundry. So pay attention if you want to keep seeing examples of where we're finding this benefit and seeing the lift. Pay attention to the Foundry. Go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. We're going to keep sharing all of this stuff as we keep learning. That's kind of what we do here at Sparkbox. And if you want to talk about this, reach out. We love talking about this stuff. Like this is what we're spending our time doing. So please do that. Have a great day. Happy Thursday, y'all. Thanks for spending some time with us. Um, I'm sure we're doing another unconference here soon. There's usually one a quarter. Um, Come on back. Have a great day. Mm,
Bye, everyone.
mm, mm.